And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a secret identity area control loot splitting thieves game by Asmodee called Gentlemen Thieves. Now this is for 2 to 5 players. Each player is going to have their own secret identity. They will be one of 5 different thieves in a different color. And the idea is that they're trying to get the right equipment to different locations, but that's trying to have it be their equipment and the equipment of their allies so that they can split the loot amongst themselves when that house is robbed. And whoever gets the most loot will be the winner. So real quick, we'll take a look at what you get inside of this little box and how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and get my final opinions on Gentlemen Thieves. So here you can see the setup for a 2-player game of Gentlemen Thieves. Now I've set it up for 2 because it's just easier to manage that way. But the game plays up to 5. Now at the beginning of the game, each player is going to get a secret identity of one of the thieves from one of these cards. So we pull one out. I'm going to be yellow, and my opponent, let's pick out this one, is going to be purple. So each one of us now has a secret identity. In addition to this, you're going to set out 2 items from these stacks of loot over here onto each of these locations. And there are 5 locations. Each of the locations is pretty much the same with some minor differences. So you can see this one here, right here, has a tunnel. Tunnels will connect locations, and if at any time the 2 connected locations have all of the requirements for scoring an area, they count as one area and they're scored. This area right here, the bank, just comes with some extra loot tokens. So when you score that area, there's more loot to be divided up between the players that are dividing it up. This area over here has a lock on it, which means that it can't be scored even if the conditions are met for being scored until that lock is removed. Now, at the beginning of the game, each player has their secret identity, and there are these things set out, and one player, the start player, will have this token. And that player is going to decide what the current alliances are between the thieves. So you'll see here that I have a token for each thief: green, gray, red, yellow, and purple. And so maybe they set the alliances up to be red and yellow, and the other alliance will be purple, gray, and green. So it will always be an alliance of 2 and an alliance of 3. Now after they've done this, we're going to go around the table in turn order, taking turns of placing out new items to be placed onto these areas in order to be able to rob them. Now in order to rob an area, you have to have one of each different symbol on these boards. The color is irrelevant for the most part, except for you're trying to determine who, in terms of the alliances, has the most presence there, the most items of their colors. So on your turn, you're going to be able to place one of these items. You'll see there are 3 available on the board, or you can draw one from one of these stacks over here. Now when you do this, you're trying to make majorities for your secret identity, and you're trying to fulfill the requirements of the area in order to have it be able to be robbed. So for example, you'll see this area currently has gloves, and it has a grappling hook. And these are purple and yellow. So right now, this alliance and this alliance are tied. Now they're also going to need to get a stethoscope, a lantern, and a mask on that area in order to be able to rob it. But maybe they don't want to contribute more to that area. Maybe they just want to influence which alliance is winning. So maybe they take this purple grappling hook, which we already have a purple glove, we already have a yellow grappling hook, but we place the purple grappling hook on this area over here. Now the purple, gray, green alliance has the majority, but they haven't contributed any more of the symbols needed in order to rob this area. And they would replenish this from the face-down tokens, and now there's a yellow glove available to be taken. And then maybe the next player goes and they see what's out there and they don't like any of it, so they draw a token off of the top of the stack, and they come up with some red gloves. And now they have to decide where they want to play these. Well, maybe it's the red player. They like their odds of placing it over here on this building over here because red and yellow already has a majority over here, and it satisfies one of the conditions. So they're moving it towards scoring it. In addition to that, these gold tokens on here allow it to be scored. So when they get that out there, not only are they increasing the chances that it gets scored sooner, but they're also increasing their majority. So you're going to keep going in turn order like this, placing tokens, but there's a different action you can take on your turn. And that is to use one of your little shamrocks here in order to take a special action. Now, the special actions are related to these different tokens that I showed you earlier, the tunnel, the lock, these little gold bar tokens, and some tokens that are off to the side of the board that I haven't showed you yet. So when you're playing one of these, you can basically take one of several different actions to influence these special tokens. The first is you can return one of these tokens instead of placing a guy from the board in order to move some of these gold tokens. You can either move them from the bank to a different location, or from the side of the board, which there are special tokens here, to any location. You can move as many as you want, and what that does is it adds to the amount of loot that will be split when an area is scored, when all 5 symbols are present on that area. Now note, you can't just buff up an area with multiple of the same symbol until, it's in your favor. There's only 3 allowed of the same symbol on a spot, so this area here could only hold 1 more grappling hook for scoring purposes. But you can add these tokens to it to increase the amount of loot so that when you're splitting you get more later on. And that's basically what the purpose of these double-sided gold tokens are. You could also, if you wanted to, spend one of these shamrocks in order to place the other tunnel. When you place another tunnel, it connects 2 areas for the purposes of satisfying the demand. So now if we connected these 2 areas here, we'd see we have a light, a stethoscope, the grappling hook, some gloves, and all we would need is a mask. In addition, you can see now purple and gray have 1, 2, 3 items, and yellow and red only have 2. So now that kind of shifts the majority for purple and gray onto 2 areas instead of onto just 1. The car special item, which you can use with one of your shamrocks, allows you to place it onto one of these areas. And when you place it out onto an area, it allows you to take any one of the items there and move it to the area with the lock. Now, that area can't be scored because there's a lock on it, but once that lock is removed, it can be scored. So you can kind of build up icons on there until you remove the lock, trying to get the majority, trying to get more loot to distribute, and then remove the lock in order to score it. So, the last option you can take with one of your shamrocks is to remove this lock. And when you remove the lock, if the place can be scored, it is immediately scored. So, let's say that it happened to have some gloves on here, and we happen to have a light. In this case, we would score this area because you can see we have 1 of each different item. There are 5 different items there. And the majority, we have 2 red. Well, that's not a majority because red and yellow are on the same team, and the other 3 all belong to the other alliance. So in this case, these 3, the purple, gray, green alliance, wins this area. And what's going to happen now is they're going to score that area. They're going to count up how many different pieces of items there are here. If there's any gold, they would add that to it. But we have 5. And you're going to divide that by the number of players in that alliance, which in this case is 3. Well, 5 divided by 3 is somewhat less than 2. So each player in that alliance is only going to get 1 item. So we would see here that purple, green, and gray each get 1, and the other 2 are removed from the game. They are not scored. After that loot is distributed, you're going to go ahead and you're going to reseed the area with 2 new tokens from the stacks. And you'll see that the stacks are now replenished, or the area is now replenished, and the stacks are getting smaller and smaller. In addition, the start player is going to pass to the next player in turn order. In this case, a 2-player game would just go to the other player, but in more player games it would pass to the left. And they're going to then recreate the alliances. So you'll see as the game changes, some of these tokens will be distributed out onto these areas. It may behoove you to change the alliances in order to jump in on an area that's about to score, where if you add your alliance to the alliance of the other players that are currently there, you'll get some of the tokens. So maybe you're this yellow player, and green and purple were allied before, and you want to be in on this. So you could do yellow, green, and purple like this, and you could make gray and red. The only rules here are that you have to change at least 2 people in terms of the alliance. If this area had been lost of its gold tokens, you would reseed that with gold tokens. And if you'd use the tunnels to score an area, one of the tunnels would be removed from the board. Anyhow, you're going to keep on in this manner, playing tokens. You can either choose from the 3 on the board or take 1 from the top of the stack, using your special abilities and so forth and so on until you get down to the last 6 tokens. So all of these tokens will have been expended by placing them out, scoring them onto these board area here, and you're going to get down to these last 6. And somewhere in the last 6 tokens is a special token that looks like this right here. When that token, the game is drawn, the game ends immediately. So all of the tokens will be gone except for potentially some of the last 6 tokens. This will end the game immediately. And what you're going to do is you're going to look and see which one of these thieves has the most loot. And whoever happens to collect the most loot will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Gentlemen Thieves from Asmodee. As I said, 2 to 5 players. I wouldn't really recommend the game at 2 players. It's a little bit obvious as to which player is which color of thief, so you're moving pieces around. Obviously, it's best for you to get your majority out there, even so far as the fact that tiebreakers come down to which pieces were used the most. So if you do end up tying, if you have more of your color than the opponent has of their color, you're going to win the game from that tiebreaker. So you want to move your pieces around the most and get majority with the colors that you're allied with, and eventually over time your opponent can kind of piece out which player you are, just from the fact that you're moving around those pieces a lot. Now with more players, you get down to the point of trying to figure out who would be your best ally based on the fact that they don't have that much loot. So allying with them, and if you win, splitting that loot with them isn't going to be as bad because it advances you, it advances them, but they're already below you, so it's not a big deal. It may even be better to pair them with you in order to prevent them from getting more loot than you do. So there's definitely that aspect. It's kind of a cool little concept. As I said, definitely better with more players because you can kind of piece out those different alliances, get the loot to the right players, and hopefully get the most loot to you without other players figuring out who exactly you are, and thus maybe giving you some loot when they don't mean to. So if that sounds good to you, check out Gentlemen Thieves from Asmodee. It may be a game that you'll enjoy.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.